Good morning, everyone, and thanks for being with us today. I'm Tom Griffin. I'm the Executive Director of the Virginia Green Travel Alliance, and today's workshop is on composting of food waste and other compostables. We're excited to have our panelists here today. I think we've got a great story to tell here. We have several of our, two of our, one is a hotel operator, one is another is an event management company, and they are both avid composters, if you will. They promote and have worked on their composting programs over the years. And then we have our hauler of compost here in the Richmond region and Central Virginia, which makes it all happen. And of course, then we have the rest of the story, which is our commercial composting facility that receives the food waste and other compostables and turns them back into compost. The compost that we see in our nurseries and oftentimes gets redirected back even to the hotels and things. So we've got a great story to tell here today. I've just got a few slides before we introduce our panelists. Just talk about what we've been doing here. This is our fourth workshop. It's really our breakout session from our conference. We had our virtual conference. Of course, we were ready to go live with that. And this was going to be one of our breakout sessions. So here basically it's just, that's me, probably a much younger picture, higher quality than what I am right now here. Hopefully our panelists have a better quality picture today. I'm stuck out here in the garage since there's a schoolhouse going on in my house right now. And I hope everybody else is in a good position and getting through all the challenges of life today. But of course, again, we are the Virginia Green Travel Alliance, and so we are supporting sustainable tourism right there. We are Virginia's Green Tourism Program, and we're a 501c3 nonprofit, and we have this unique partnership with Virginia Tourism, also with the Virginia Department of Environmental Quality, and then also the Virginia Restaurant, Lodging, and Travel Association. So we have a certification program where we work with over 1,100 hotel operators, hotels, B&Bs, tourism operators rather. Tourism's a big industry, all kinds of attractions, restaurants, conference centers, convention centers, and certainly festivals and events. So that's the backbone behind our program, and we encourage everyone out there to support our green certified partners. So again, this is part of our conference, and this workshop itself couldn't have happened without the support of our sponsors. There it is: Virginia Tourism, Richmond Region Tourism, State Parks, Hilton, and Dominion Energy. DEQ gold sponsors, McGuire Woods Consulting, thanks to them, and also our silver sponsors, Naturepedic Organic Mattresses and Virginia Beach Tourism. And also we have lots of different supporting partners and organizations that help us promote the program and get this all done. Lastly, Green Tourism Business Expo. Okay, it's still live. Basically, our exhibitor booths are still open. I've been there for 4 weeks now, and those folks there, the contact information is available for you. Lots of great videos about the green products and services that help our service providers become more green over time, if you will, and a lot of the different partners that also provide great resources that help us. When you're with us, please look us up on Facebook, support what we're doing here. These are our handles and things. And without further ado, we will get started here with our program. I'm actually going to take this down for just a second so you can say hello to everybody in person here. All right. And let's see, I'm going to turn this over to our moderator and a great friend and also a board member of the Virginia Green Travel Alliance, Tracey Leverty of Echelon Events, and also with Keep Virginia Beautiful. Thanks, Tracey.
Wow, thanks, Tom. It is super exciting to be here with you all. Mid-morning, we're almost to the hump of hump day. Is that what you say when it's almost midday on Wednesday. Thanks, Tom, for having me. I'm honored, obviously, to be a part of Virginia Green Travel Alliance as a board member, as a certified participant with all the events that Echelon Events does. We are certified and do everything possible to be green, and as an environmental partner with my work at Keep Virginia Beautiful. As everyone knows, sometimes I feel like we are preaching to the choir, but events and tourism activities create an enormous amount of waste. And over the last 10 years, the increasing attention to straws, other single-use plastics, styrofoam, becoming legislation, all of these things have helped us come a long way in 10 years, but it doesn't always, it's not always easy. I mean, obviously these things affect our bottom line because it's not always cheap to be green. And so what I have found, and what hopefully our panelists are going to talk about today, is that it is more commonplace. It is definitely easier to do than ever, whether you're doing it at home or in your small organization or in a large organization like John Cario has to manage. Before we get into it all, I'd like to honestly give a quick hand to everyone who's always fought to bring green practices into your business as an organization, despite the pushback, in order to do things responsibly and sustainably. I think those of you who have been in this world for a while remember how hard it was to get anyone to listen to how important these things were. And now corporations, colleges, universities, hospitals, attractions, we're again the choir, but everyone else is figuring out that it is easy and it's beneficial to everyone around us to be as green as we can be when we do our activities. Our topic today, as you know, is composting. And we've really got the experts when it comes to all of these, every single part of the process. As I said, both residentially and commercially. So for the next hour, I'm excited to share the computer screen with John Cario, who's the GM of Hilton Richmond Downtown. Full-scale composting in his operation he can tell you how long and give you a brief description of everything he does. We've also got Chip and Marshall Hall, who are the angels in disguise, NOPE, Natural Organic Process Enterprise, and they are the haulers. And Gary Gittere, who is McGill Compost, the actual processor of all of this junk that we create and look to make into liquid gold. Before I hand it over to John, I want to give a little history about why I'm so engaged in composting. Do you want to do the poll now, John?
Yeah, let's do one of the polls maybe.
Okay.
What we have here, folks, is just a kind of a fun little tool to get us started, maybe get some ideas flowing and get the chat and questions going. But so just a poll. Let's see if this works correctly. I'm going to launch this about what we do as far as compost is concerned. And you see there, it's just simply asking, do you already compost? And so everybody could just participate with this. Do you compost at home? Do you compost at work? And I've got two different levels there. It's composting at work with kind of someone just, getting the coffee grounds and a few veggies and things. And then, or are you composting full scale? All sort of like what John's doing over here. Okay. I think we have about half of us in there, maybe a few more votes.
I think a funny question would be, how many of you fight with yourself to decide whether to put the onion peel in the freezer to make broth out of it or feed your pile?
All right, so we've got most folks in here, and let's see, we have like 83% of those that pulled in. They said that they do compost at home, and we have 3 folks that are working with a hauler that picks it up. So that's I'm supposed to share the results. Sorry about that. Okay. So there's that one, and let's see. Trying to see if we can. We're stop sharing the results.
The work one is interesting. I'll be interested to hear from Chip and Marshall about with less people being in these offices, the businesses that they were going to. That'll be interesting to hear about.
And here's another little one right here, and it's simply what percentage of home waste is compostable? And then also what percentage of restaurant waste is compostable. So there are no complete right answers here. It's kind of a sliding scale, but just see what we think there. Okay. Got sort of most of us in there, and I'm sorry, panelists, I was supposed to have hit another button at first that let you vote too. So I bet you would have added to the numbers for us. And there we go. We have 61% coming in at the 35% for the first question. What percentage of home waste? EPA says roughly 24 to 28%, and then for restaurant waste, that they're saying about 60 to 80%, depending on what type of restaurant. So that's it. Okay.
Awesome.
All right. So now I'm going to share the screen here with you. So we've got a few slides for you, Tracey. Now,
Yeah.
make sure I got the right one up. Okay. All right. There you go.
So about 10 years ago, for those of you who don't know, I run an event management company, and one of our largest events is Broad Appetit. And although Broad Appetit started in 2008, I want to say, and I used compostable materials, the composting process was not fully in place. So while I thought I was doing great things, everything wasn't in place yet. It was certainly better than using styrofoam. But what I did was I just made this commitment to honestly put as few items in the landfill as possible. And if you've been to Broad Appetit, you can do the math. You know, with a vendor count of over 130, 70 of which were food, all doling out 1,000 servings. You know, that adds up. And my event alone, I was putting out over 200,000 pieces of single use whatever. So it was very, very, very important for me to embed and bake a price into my vendor fee, my operations, the way I did things from the very beginning, in order to make this process not so horrible on the environment. The worst thing you want to see when you are tearing down an event and you're the last one there and the haulers come is all these roll-offs going to the landfill. Maybe there are a lot of people that don't pay attention to that, but it was extremely important for me. And so I started a journey of a lot of trial and error over the last 10 years. And we know that we divert nearly 70% of our waste away from landfills, and they go to recycling and composting systems. And I have to obviously give huge kudos to both Tom, Nope, and I assume our stuff goes to McGill. All of these folks have made this incredibly uplifting and important, and I'm just excited that they were here to help me make a really wasteful event less impactful on the environment. So that's kind of where my composting activity lies, or in my events, and I just try to again reduce the amount of waste we create in the beginning, as well as making what we do produce go to a compost. Now, before I turn it over to John, I want to leave you with three things. The most important thing, this one is a great shout, partner with a purpose, partner with people. If you wouldn't mind going back to that Kroger slide, when you have partners at the table that also share your intentions and beliefs around how important food waste is and other types of waste, and just an environmental take on things. I know everyone has it as a top three, but there are ones that really walk the walk and talk the talk. And so I encourage you to partner with a purpose, because they will further your message, and you can help further the entire message as well. As you can see, Kroger is all in for reducing hunger and waste at the same time. The other thing, I educate. If you want to go to that slide, Tom, that has the Well, it's got to form. Educate the people that you are counting on to execute your plan. Bras de Petit, nothing happened overnight. I think we diverted the very first year only 20%. And each year we had struggles with the amount of people we had manning stations, and people didn't understand. And so over the course of time, you educate the vendors on what it's all about. You give them resources. We meet with them. We give them on-site support. Tom was out there going around doing booth-to-booth visits with folks to see exactly had they followed our rules. And don't be afraid to be strict about it. It's very serious business, and when you're investing that much money in it, it's worth putting all of your time and energy into it. And lastly, shout about it. You got to talk about how green you are. You have to. People care. More and more people care. And through all of the efforts that you take, never miss the opportunity to tell people what you're doing. And Virginia Green Travel Alliance is one of those ways that you can do that. We have so many different tools, and we're working on a really robust toolkit for people who are a part of our organization in ways that you can promote the fact that you're being green, whether you're an organization, an event, or a business such as the Hilton. And with that, I want to turn it over to John and let him talk about what he does at the Hilton.
All right. And John, let me just, now you should be able to share your screen now, John.
All right, thank you, Tracy. And let me find my screen here. I think this is it. Is that it, Tom?
Yes, sir.
All right. Oop. Okay. Thanks, everybody, and thank you, Tracy. Great introduction. We've been composting for the past decade, and doing the math, and I'll get to that in a minute. But certainly, probably Chip and Marshall can tell us over 250,000 pounds of raw food going to their location. But before I get to that, and I'll touch a little bit on what you need to do before you dive into the compost bin. And Tracy touched on a few things. 10 years ago, I wanted to make sure I had the buy-in from my team before John did anything crazy, which people look at me and say often, "What are you doing now?" But I had to get the buy-in from my kitchen team, my chef, and we've had many chefs over the years, and certainly you want to, of course, make sure they're ready to handle the effort you're going to undertake. If you have a green team, most organizations have green teams out there. Make sure they're committed and aware of what you're going to undertake in composting or recycling or any of those efforts. The engineering team's another important component. Sometimes I battle with my engineers on, do we want to continue to do this, especially if there's little critters that come out from the compost areas, and Chip and Marshall are probably aware of those guys as well. So we got to keep those areas clean and avoid contamination. The kitchen crew vital in ensuring there's no contamination in the bins as well. And you have to ensure the entire staff's aware. If someone walks through the kitchen and doesn't know what the blue bin is all about for raw food, they might stick a Coke bottle or a Pepsi can in there. So certainly, again, getting the buy-in from your team is super important. Nope and the guys definitely help us out with signage. And so certainly this sign in the kitchen talks about Virginia Green and recycling, but then there's also composting signs on what you can and can't compost. So again, to Tracy's points, there are some things that you can put in that compost bin, and also to the little poll we took, there's some things that you don't want to go into the compost bin. There's a debate now about pizza boxes. I've heard all sorts of things that, some you can do pizza boxes, some you can't, but I'm sure Chip and Marshall probably touch on that as well. So signage is important, testing is important, walking through your kitchen and making sure you eyeball those bins before they go to Nope, and they come calling on you and saying, "Hey, John, you got some bad trash." So vital to have the training as well. The collection bin, I mentioned the blue bins. So this is a quick picture of the dish machine in our kitchen. So there's blue bins at the prep areas. There's blue bins by the dish machines. Your servers come back and put trash in the trash and compostable items in the blue bins. And it's hard to tell what that bag in there in the blue bin is. What is it, like a greenish, yellowish color bag? That's a compostable bag. So it's important to use the right materials and bags, and you do the separation properly. I put a note on here. In one of our past conferences, I want to say in Charlottesville, I saw them using big bins on wheels. So I think it's Nope's competitor down in that Charlottesville area, Big Bear or something like that. Anyway, that's another option. You know, you just need to do what's right for your organization. Perhaps your compost bins are on wheels and then your team wheels it to the pickup area. So something you can talk to your folks that collect. A picture of Marshall in the back of the truck, I think a few years back. So certainly getting his hands dirty, and you know, they're there to work with you and pick up your compost, but also talk to your team. Over the years, we had them out and talk to our crew about contamination and proper use of the bags and whatnot. So certainly use your support and partners. Tracey touched on that as well, and get them involved so it's successful all the way around. I discussed tracking a little bit early on, and Marshall and the team really give some good information to us that we can track. And Hilton also uses a Lightstay platform that we track all things energy and even volunteering and community efforts. So we'll take these numbers and drop it into Lightstay to help our overall numbers of carbon reduction. Cool thing about what we're doing, the finished product, Nope and their team allow us to say, hey, can you give a couple bags of compost to, you know, the garden over at Henrico. So over the years, we've been able to do that and give back. And it's a great feeling to see that raw food turn into a finished product and go back into the community. Again, to one of Tracey's points, you know, telling about what you're doing. So that's a big story there about, hey, we turned this raw food and this effort and didn't go to landfill. It went to a garden. Wonderful story. Speaking of gardens, we have our atrium garden that tells the story as well, and also have some students from UMFS come out every year and help us plant it. So again, that compost goes full circle, comes back either to a community garden or our chef's garden. Now, I will say that does not help our food cost much. I did pick one pepper there, I think, this week, and a couple cucumbers. And actually, we do have some good mint. So if you want to come by and have a nice mojito, there's some great mint in our atrium garden. But again, it tells a story, and it shows that whole full circle of composting. You know, ROI is, I said it's a little bit difficult to measure. You know, certainly there's less trash going in the compactor. Republic is taking less of our hauls, but we do have to pay Chip to keep them in business, and we have to pay for the plastic bags. So there is a, you know, a cost factor. However, the ROI comes in those guests that want to see that you're doing this, and the community that enjoys getting that soil to use. And it's just basically, it's the right thing to do, right? And then, awards and recognition. So the efforts pay off in things like letters from your senator and awards from Tom and Virginia Green Travel Alliance over the years. So those are all wonderful things. And that is it. The end, or is it the beginning? That is the question. I'll stop there.
Thanks, John. And Tracey, certainly jump in. I just let you know that I need to grab the screen share again to set up for Marshall and Chip.
No, that's awesome. Thank you, John. Now, we did get, you touched on the costs. I was just looking at some of the questions Mary Stewart had about the cost of composting. I think you just addressed all that. Yeah, it's a trade-off for sure. And it doesn't happen overnight. Between education and finally realizing the rewards of doing the right thing and these other non-really monetary rewards that you get from it, there is a little bit of a cost, absolutely.
Yeah, I would just add on to that. Oftentimes, there's a pretty significant waste reduction, but it takes a little while to find that baseline, and often you have to go in and renegotiate your waste contract because the waste haulers aren't going to automatically offer to lower your bill. So that's an important thing, is kind of to get that baseline of how much are you reducing, and then there may be an opportunity to reduce your bill through a little negotiation.
So Marshall, I went ahead and I know you sent some pictures over, and I just dropped them, like in the context of your website here. I don't know if you wanted to talk about your website at all while it's up.
Yeah, sure. I'll go ahead and kind of kick it off. This is our website, NOPEVA.com. Explains about what we do and a lot of kind of our service offerings and different ways you can get in touch with us and find us on social media. We definitely want to take a moment and say we appreciate everybody's partnership here. Certainly Tom over the years, John, Tracey, everybody here, Gary, and the folks at McGill. We couldn't do it without everybody that's here today. And that being said, one of the things I want to stress is that, to a lot of people, and especially here in Virginia, composting is a relatively new idea, especially in terms of, working it into more of a commercial environment at hotels or for events. And it really takes the support from the people from the top down. That we found that's one of the biggest keys to a successful program, is to have that buy-in and understand that there is a process of trial and error, and that oftentimes, people come in with good intentions, but anytime you start to do something new, that there's going to be kind of some learning curve. And, we really appreciate the folks that have, stuck with us through all the years to keep getting it a little bit better and grow their knowledge base. So definitely appreciate our partnerships here. It's really important that in composting not be kind of an afterthought. We've been approached over the years by people that kind of wanted to throw composting in at the last moment, and that typically creates an operational difficulty, if you don't work on it as part of the plan, from the beginning. So, as part of the buy-in, we stress that, hey, this is not something that you can just put together at the last minute, that, it has to be coordinated with volunteers, and, people have to be educated on how things work and, what's compostable and what's not compostable. And we're passionate about that. I would say one of the biggest things that we enjoy, especially working with the events, are engaging people. I can't tell you how many times that, I've run into somebody, especially at an event in an urban environment where, I talked to a young kid that has never even, thought about composting before. And this is kind of this is the opening, if you will, for me to discuss, hey, why are we doing this? And what's good about this? And, I've actually seen people that had engaged at previous events that say, hey, I remember you, and now this time I know what to do. And that's one of the most critical parts of doing what we're doing, is even if it takes a while to engage, all the people that we need to build a movement, that it's worth it in the end, especially if we can get people to listen to us talk about why composting is good. And I can, as everybody probably knows here, I can do that all day. So, again, definitely something that you want to pre-plan for and think about how you want to do it. A lot of the events, you got to think about where you want to put your trash receptacles in a convenient place. And, I think John had mentioned signage is another critical thing. Here's a picture. I think this was one of the oyster events we did with Virginia Green. But, we found that having, signage at eye level that's very clear, helps people know what to do. So again, we're proud to explain, how it all works. This is a picture of some freshly dropped. It's very difficult to find a pretty picture of compost, but this is one of the good ones, because here we have some brightly contrasting fruit going into a compost pile that's just getting set up. So this is one of my favorite kind of in action compost pictures that we have. And then let's see. There's me delivering some compost at Stewart School, actually. And again, we found that it's great. It's something that can be worked into curriculum so that people, from a younger age understand, kind of the benefits and really compost place in the food cycle, from going from something that has been, for the last 50, 60 years thought of as a waste product to something where we can grow more food and provide the nutrients for the earth, so that we can grow healthy food. We always say healthy food makes healthy people. Well, healthy soil makes healthy food, and compost is, the key. Before World War II, pretty much there was no petrochemical fertilizer industry, and anybody that wanted to fertilize their ground used compost. So, we're proud to be kind of bringing it back to the old school, as we're discovering a lot of the ways that our grandparents did things were actually better, and also working with, area community gardens is a key part of our, our social impact. NOPE is a certified B Corp. We became a B Corp in 2014. This is along with other companies like Patagonia, Etsy, Ben & Jerry's ice cream. And so our commitment is to social and environmental impacts. And so, we're proud to reduce environmental impacts through composting. And, we also are proud to be, to have a social impact to help provide nutrients for the soil for community gardens and low income and underserved neighborhoods. And so with that, I will yield it over to Dad. Dad, don't forget that you're muted right now, but please feel free to add on or share some of your thoughts. You're muted. You have to unmute yourself, Dad. The little red icon you have to click on. There you go.
There he is.
Now can you hear me? Okay. All right. Well, quite interesting questions I'm seeing popping up on the chat board. And there's, first I'd like to thank the people we partner with, the customers, McGill, and we sorely miss the events that we've done regularly in the Richmond area. I think that, it was my official beginning of summer when we do the broad aperitif. And so I've kind of missed that this year, but a lot of things have been missed this year. So the cost is definitely irrelevant. And one of the things that's a problem in Virginia is a very competitive landfill market that doesn't match up to states to the north. And those folks can make cost savings pretty easy because the composting processing fees are more moderate than some of the landfills to the north. But the cost is relevant. One of the good things is that food waste, primarily kitchen waste, is very heavy. And garbage for years has been charged per ton. And it's difficult to monitor, but with the right effort, you can pretty well measure a percent lower of your cost based on weight by just observing the contrast between the two bills. Let's see. Well, our customer base is across the board. Many of our business clients that have large office buildings of course, there's nobody home. And so we've basically gone into suspension mode. However, our larger customers that have kitchens that are still running, grocery stores, hospitals, now we're seeing the universities come back, and lots of interest in the education segment. Those have maintained us. We're not, having a flourishing year, but the other hand, we're looking for the long term. So we've got new equipment coming on board. We want to be in a position and try to pick up the slack once things resume, which I'm confident they will. Composting itself, we're fortunate in Virginia that we work with McGill and a few other locations, and there's a good distribution of people that can willingly process it. Now, we're able to take proteins and PLA and compostable ware, and again, because of McGill's large operation, this mixes in properly. I think Gary can talk to you about it, but the ability to take the food waste. One of the good things that we do together is we can attract the capacity of McGill, virtually unlimited on food, and they can take it. So many people are just amazed that it converts into compost pretty quickly. They have a high-speed system, but they are able to take the paper plates, the PLA bags, the serveware, and the compostable utensils. It's a never-ending challenge to find, mixed materials in. Some compostable, some not compostable. So that's often a challenge that we do. And really the only thing we can do is educate people. Now, when Marshall was growing up, I always wondered, what's this kid gonna turn into? And I now am related to a compost nerd. He really, really, really enjoys the intricacies of how the elements all work together. But composting in Virginia, 11 years of our operation, and we've been able to see a growth. It was going great guns in January. But after that, then we've had to adjust. Marshall, you got any more comments? Unmute.
Yeah, I'm cautiously optimistic about the long-term prognosis that, I think everybody's, kind of been dealing with the COVID thing in different capacities. And I don't think it's been easy for most people, but, we're resilient, I think collectively as a group, and can't wait to get back to full scale composting.
Well, and can I add that we are super glad that you turned into a compost nerd, because, and can you start having offspring?
Well, I just have one generation to deal with, so he takes the future. I always tell him that, and he always grins at me and says, "What?
It's
That
super
makes you the past."
I can't promise offspring, but I will promise to preach the gospel. That's for sure, of composting.
Well, you
But the overall
both do an amazing job. I can't thank you enough for being as dedicated as you are. Literally, Brought Up Petite would not be able to do what it did without you guys and Tom and his green teams. We've talked about the different intersections of where it all happens, and it's the education and it's consistency, and you two are making it happen. So
well, thank you. And I think that more and more people become aware, and again, we're fortunate because the capacity is really growing and able to handle the food waste. And so education is a big part of it. People have to understand what the payback is. And our customers vary from people that are, tight with their every penny, and then there's some people that say, hey, it's for the better good, so the greater good. And again, our customers, Marshall commented about the need for it from the top down, and where we have clients that the management does stick their nose in the compost bin periodically, they seem to get the word out that, minimize the contamination. Gary's not afraid to call me and send me pictures if something did get past us. And so they keep us in line, and, we want to be able to keep it coming to him. It's stuff that he can use, and we don't want to clog up your system. So it's an education thing. I guess that's it for me.
Awesome. Thank you both. Mary Stewart's chiming in and just simply asked, what can people be doing to advocate for more composting in Virginia? I think we've talked a lot about the education piece. And the more you know, the stronger you are. And I think with this next speaker, Gary's going to talk to us about what happens on that back end. And so knowing the full story probably will help when you have someone's ear that wants to hear about composting. You can tell the entire story and everything that you've learned today. So Gary, do you want to take it away?
I do. I need to be able to share my screen, Tom.
Oh, I think that's.
Yep, you're good. I got it. Came up. My bad. All right. Well, good morning to everyone. I appreciate the opportunity to speak to everyone here. Let me get my up here. So I do want to reiterate a little bit what the compost nerd there, Marshall, said, and that this really, McGill would not be possible, quite frankly, without the commitments from organizations like Virginia Green and companies like John at Hilton and Tracey's, and quite frankly, without the commitment from organizations like Chip and Marshall's. And as you get into this, you'll see that there's a lot of opportunity for composting, but the operational side of it still has a lot of work to be done. Without these small companies like Chip and Marshall committing to collecting the food waste, quite frankly, composting would not be feasible. It really wouldn't. So, so I'll move on from there. And I'd like to start out with this slide, and it usually surprises people that are not into composting, and they see only 8% of Americans. And it was ironic that the initial poll that we did showed 83% of the folks on this call are into doing backyard composting. Congratulations, I do it as well. Even though I work for a company, I actually do my own composting. I think what really is important here is that folks that are committed to participate in a organization, in an event like this, want to compost. They know about it. But what's exciting is there's 90-some% of people out there that still don't understand the benefits of composting. So there's really great opportunity for educating the public and getting folks to understand what they should be doing from backyard to commercial composting. A lot of folks really don't know what composting is, and before 2018, the actual definition was really not too beneficial for the industry. So the U.S. Composting Council worked with APCO, Association of American Plant Food Control Officials, which are focused on setting regulations for fertilizer laws and things like that throughout the states. And they came up with a new definition. And I put in my little gold words here, that composting is really a manufacturing process in a lot of respects. It is very scientific, and what's really exciting is it actually is now focused on being beneficial for plant growth. Believe it or not, none of these terms were utilized in the previous definition of compost. So we're really excited that we're starting to get the understanding, a better understanding of what composting really is. So why compost? Well, there's certainly a lot of things we can talk about here. Most everyone realizes this. The one I like to focus on is it really does build healthy soils. Chip mentioned it. And John understands that there's opportunity of taking that material that they've brought into a facility like McGill's, putting it back into the soil, creating an environment to grow healthy plants, vegetables, trees, whatever. That's a huge, huge thing. We need to continue to develop these markets. The more compost that's made, the more markets we need to actually create in order for companies like McGill to continue to be successful. Not only is it a great opportunity for people to understand the benefits of composting, but as you can see by this slide, there's a lot of food waste out there that's not being either utilized in food banks, maybe even farm animals, but composting food waste is a great opportunity. So again, I commend companies like John with Hilton Properties, and of course Tracey with her events and so forth, that they understand the benefits of not putting this into landfills and understanding that you can take this material to a facility like McGill's and turn it into something that can be utilized back into the soil again. So why commercial composting? Well, certainly we can do it in our backyards that we talked about, but to do this on a large scale, you need organizations and companies like McGill's out there to be able to create a opportunity for bringing in the high volume that we hope to continue grows out there. We are extremely regulated. We do a lot of testing, both in the incoming inputs, our feedstocks, and also the product that we actually make. We make a very consistent product, and it is available in different forms, mostly bulk and also bags. So what are exactly feedstocks or the inputs? Well, it can be everything from, we've talked about food waste to cooking grease to yard waste, right on down to virtually anything that is organic in nature. So we are permitted to take most anything that is organic wise that comes into our facility, but we are extremely focused on testing those. We make sure that you can't just call us up and bring in a product. Obviously, we work with certain haulers like Nope, and we're really focused on having a diversity of product into our facility. And that's really important because one of the things that I've seen out there, a lot of folks don't realize that the way the compost is made is going to affect actually the type of planting you may do. So if you're using strictly a yard waste compost, which is wonderful, it's not going to be really very nutrient rich. So you need to be aware that when you are using a material like that, that you need to maybe add some type of organic nutrients to it. If you're using a product that's made from a facility like McGill, we're usually pretty rich because we bring in quite a bit of food waste and other amendments like biosolids and so forth that gives us a wonderful, rich, diverse product that allows for a limited amount of additional nutrients to be made. So when you're looking at the type of compost you make sure you're using that for the application that you're going to be looking at as well. So there are different types of commercial composting. The most popular is your windrow composting in the top left-hand corner. That's usually done in large areas, a lot of farms out further away from rural areas. You have a small, what they call a vessel, which happens in prisons and some small schools and things like that. We use it, but the most popular, or becoming the most popular, is what's called aerated static pile. And McGill on the bottom right-hand corner, that's our plant there in Waverly, Virginia. We use what we call modified aerated static pile. We actually do it under roof. So as you can see, we're very environmentally protected, and that helps to create a very controlled environment so we don't have to deal with a lot of the challenges that a facility outside may have to deal with. So what does that wonderful material that Chip and Marshall bring into our facility, how does it go? Well, on the left, starting in step one, it's actually put into our controlled area, into our pit, we call it. That's where all the product is actually dumped into it. And then we take and we make what I call our Colonel Sanders special recipe, where our guys will blend it up with a variety of different carbon sources like the yard waste and the sawdust and ground up pallets and so forth, with the food waste and all the other wonderful intake materials we have. And then on the right-hand side there, you see that's an empty bay. It gives you an idea on seeing a little bit of how our process is made, and that's channels down the bottom that have pipes in it that will actually blow air into it. That makes this wonderful environment for the microbes to thrive. That material is filled into that bay. It's about 1,000 pounds of material that gets 1,000 tons of material that gets in there, and then that's what we call our processing bay. It goes through a regulatory process, and after it goes through a certain period of time, and then is then primarily screened. That's the first one, step 4, where it actually is dumped into a new screener that we put into commission this year, and it gets out all the large pieces. And one of the neat things about our process is we do have a diversity, a large amount of different types of intake materials, and then we take those larger materials and we put that back through the process again. So it'll go through sometimes 2-3 times before it's broken down enough that it actually becomes finished compost. And the benefit there is it makes a very homogeneous product. So we have all those bacteria, fungi, and so forth that continue to go through the process that add more diversity to the material. After it goes to the processing or the primary screen, excuse me, it then becomes part of our curing process. So it's put into these curing bays where we allow it to cure for a period of time before it becomes mature and stable. And all that means is the activity, the microbial activity is slowed down to the point where it's able to be utilized. It then becomes screened into these to this wonderful, rich, dark product we call finished compost. And as our owner would tell you, compost is never finished. It's always actually has activity in it. It's just slowed down so it can be utilized into the soil. This gives you a little overview. On the left-hand side, it shows up top there, the pit. It comes in and then, we blend it. We put it into those processing bays. Again, it's then screened out the larger pieces to a curing bay until we finish product. One of the neat things that we do is we actually monitor our product pretty much every 2 minutes, and we know exactly what that temperature is. So it's very consistent. And this is what makes our system really beneficial. It's economical and it's controlled. One of the things I like to talk about is microbes. It really is all about the microbes from the variety of different microbial activity that's promoted through the process. As you can see, just a spoon of compost has more microbes than the 7 billion people that are living here in the United States, in the world. So the different markets, these are just the different markets you can see compost used on, everything from our backyard to our planting beds to becoming more popular into sequestering carbon. Again, as Marshall and Chip outlined, education and the contamination for food waste is extremely important for most of these markets. And then just kind of to finish up here, the benefit of being part of programs like the U.S. Composting Certification, seal of testing assurance assures that you're getting a product that is made with meeting all these parameters and can be utilized in all these different applications. So as I like to say, compost offers the most practical, economical, and sustainable means to rebuilding our topsoil layer and handles the most diverse amount of waste versus all other methods. It is really the best way of low-hanging fruit. With that, I will be finished up. So thank you all very much. I really appreciate the time.
Awesome, Gary. And, we do have a good amount of time here. Like, we've got time for some questions and answers from our panelists. But, as I just sent out a chat, we're under no big time restriction to turn off the video right away or in the questions. So please, we're going to address several of the questions I already have, but feel free to chime in with your comments and other questions. Tracey, did you have any questions lined up on your end, or?
I'm just reading through the ones that have come through.
Okay. And a lot of good talk about, just expanding, the idea of composting within our communities. Some good ideas. I mean, I chimed in with a couple of these myself. I mean, one of my big pet peeves is simply that, it's great that our restaurants, and in fact, it's a requirement, that you have to eliminate styrofoam from your restaurant in order to be certified Virginia Green. And of course, lots of other folks are going to compostables and getting rid of styrofoam, but yet they're not providing for composting. So I'll just throw that one out there to our panelists. What can be done to kind of get these restaurants moving in the right direction? I also wonder, sometimes I see a lot of restaurants saying they're collecting for compost, and yet I've never heard from Chip and Marshall that that those folks are their customers, like Chipotle or something is one of those. And maybe you could comment on that.
Well, interesting that you mentioned Chipotle. We have been working, just getting started within the last probably 3 or 4 months with a good number of Chipotles in the Tidewater region. We have one here in Richmond that's still getting ready to get started over on Iron Bridge Road near Courthouse. So what they're doing is they're bringing in the ones that are in our service area that are getting fresh to start up. They're starting with those. And I think once they can establish some kind of anchors here in Virginia that are doing well, then they'll be able to go back and work with some of these restaurants that have not been composting for a long time. So Chipotle, definitely we're working with. There was another question, I guess it was addressed to Gary, and I don't want to take that from you if you want to answer it, but and I just felt like it was appropriate to answer this question. This says, for Gary, how do you deal with items such as PLA cups that look like regular clear plastic cups? Well, that's a big part of what we do. You know, part of our relationship with the folks that turn it into compost is they're counting on us to make sure that we don't bring them a bunch of contamination. So it's a big part of what we do. You know, being in the industry for 10 years, we know pretty well what the compostable products look like. We're familiar with most of all the major brands. And if it's something that we're not familiar with that claims to be compostable, we always ask to see the box that it came in. And that's how we usually do the double check. Dad, you look like you have something to add. Don't forget you're muted. He's dead. You're still muted.
He's working on it.
You have to unmute it the same way you did the first time.
Okay, clicking on the wrong button. Okay, so, well, one of the things that the industry has tried to develop, and they're being pretty persistent about it, is identifying things that are compostable. So we kind of operate on the basis, if it's not labeled, if it's not identified, then we assume it's not compostable. But if it has a number 7 symbol, if it's natural paper without a lot of plastic, that's compostable. So it really does put a little bit of a burden on the hauler to do some sorting. Typically, if we see, you know, regular plastic cups coming out in the stream, we take a picture, we document it, we contact the location and say, you know, there's alternatives. If you want to continue with plastic, you'll have to put that in the trash or the recycling, not put it in with the compost. But the industry overall, I think today, if you're at a compostable event, you can look at the knives and the forks. We work with one company called Echo Products, and they have green stripes on their products. So it's becoming less complicated. It's the little things like the ketchup packs. And of course, through the COVID thing, everybody's gone back to that. They've gotten away from the bulk. And so, you know, it's just changing the nature of what we collect. So I just want to add that you can count on it if it says it's compostable, pretty assuredly. I think the federal government and the federal trade people have, you know, slapped some hands that kind of misrepresented whether it was compostable or not.
Here's another question that could be related for Gary from Allison McCormick. How much yard waste does McGill receive? This is coming from municipalities that have services like leaf collection. So, you know, hopefully, there's probably going to be some contamination when we're coming from post-consumer type sources, but hopefully that if you've got, you know, lots of yard waste and other material that you're working through, maybe that helps. What are your thoughts about that, Gary?
Yeah, so it really is a challenge, and as Chip and Marshall outlined, and it was actually mentioned several times with him, those guys, and John, is it's an educational aspect to it. It starts with companies like John's. I mean, it really has to be focused on, you know, from the very beginning, that not only do there people that maybe throw it into their bins understand the benefits of not contaminating it, and what types of compostable materials they should be using, but it has to filter down to their restaurant staff and everything. And then when it gets to the hauler like Chip and Marshall, they pick through it, they get their hands dirty, and the same with us. I mean, it gets to ours, we screen. We work with a lot of parks and recreation, golf courses and so forth. And these guys have very, very, very low tolerance for any type of contamination that comes through. So, we do take in some yard waste. It is a challenge. It has to be clean. We used to work with Virginia Beach. We did not up that relationship several years ago, primarily because they just decided not to stop collecting in plastic bags, and it became a real hassle for us at our facility trying to remove that plastic bags out of the process. And we've almost got to the point where when people get even a little bit of contamination into that finished product, they question us, where, that's great because we developed that high level of a non-contaminated finished product, but it does create a lot of a challenge, especially for certain applications, like especially when you get into parks and recs and stuff. You can't have the glass or the sharp plastics getting in there because you don't want your kids playing on soccer fields or something like that.
Great, Gary. I've got a couple follow-up ideas there, but first I wanted to address a follow-up question about what happens to your final product. Just folks wanting to know, where does McGill bags of McGill compost go? Is it sold to another company? What types of nurseries? And you mentioned the fact that golf courses, and I'm sure you're delivering in bulk in that situation.
Exactly. So we work through what we call a reseller network. We don't deal directly with the consumer because we ship out primarily our bulk products are in large tractor trailer loads. You can actually go to McGill Compost or McGillSoilBuilder.com, and there's a little label there that says where to buy. Click on it, punch in your zip code, and you can look for bulk or bag product. In Virginia, we do sell our product in bags. It's at select locations, but mostly what we sell is in bulk. And most of these companies will either sell our product direct, they blend it, which is great for applications for your gardens, for top dressing. You can use compost, as I showed. Went through the presentation pretty quick because of time, but there's a lot of opportunities for using compost in pretty much any of these soils because they're so depleted right now.
So my follow-up question for all the panelists really is, and even everybody out there is, there's been a lot of talk, even on the chat line, about how can we really boost composting in our communities. But also, I think that one of the things that holds us back is that, thank goodness you all are there, but there just aren't that many facilities like yours. How can we get you to duplicate yourself more all over the state, duplicate the compost nerds as well, because basically we're talking about this, and the services and the opportunity to compost in a facility like yours are fairly limited. I mean, we have Black Bear and a couple of other folks, but many of the other type windrow type places have been somewhat limited from a capacity standpoint, and even the types of things that they can take. So how can we get there? I mean, is it the fact that the regulations are too hard to allow for it, and what are your thoughts?
So it's a combination of things, and regulations certainly play into it. It's the concept of everybody loves, well, I say most people love composting, but they don't want it in their backyard. So, you've got to be cognizant of where it can go. There are only a handful of private composters in North Carolina, in Virginia. It's not a whole lot down here either, but there are quite a few municipal facilities out there as well that do a really nice job that really need to continue stepping up. So it's a function of financing. We do ours, and obviously, as you can see, large facilities. So you have to make sure that you've got the right space, the areas, you've got to get permitted. You have to have the correct amount of intake materials to make it economically feasible. But for the most part, I think we're going to see more municipalities start to realize that this can be done. Private partner relationships. We just worked with a municipality down in South Carolina where we're we are managing their facility. So McGill is looking at different avenues than just building our buildings and creating that to say, how else can we do this throughout? So I think there's just really great opportunity. It just needs to be discussed and figure out how we can do it from an economic perspective as well.
Yeah, I would just add on to
Yeah.
the kind of the piece talking
Go ahead.
about education. I think this is kind of the fundamental thing. You know, often, and I'll tell people, hey, if you look at traditional recycling 30, 40 years ago, it was very, you know, there wasn't nearly the participation as there was today, that there is today. And part of the reason for that is because, you know, over, you know, multiple decades, there was this kind of public engagement campaign at school, at sporting events, you know, recycle your cans and bottles. And, you know, it took a good little while for that to take hold and people to understand why this is a good thing. And I would dare to say when you drive down the streets in most areas now, everybody's got the recycling out, but that didn't happen overnight. And that's critical to the education piece. And, you know, we're in it for the long haul, and, you know, we're going to keep reaching people. And I'm convinced, I've literally never had one person tell me, when I told them that what our company does, I've literally never had one person say this is a bad idea. It's just about engaging people and explaining why we're collecting last week's lasagna. Because if people don't have context, it just seems kind of gross in the middle of summertime, you know. But, you know, once you have that context, you understand what the environmental impacts, the positive environmental impacts are, you literally will get buy-in from most people. So I think that's a key part, is just continue to educate people and explain to people why it's a good thing. And just like recycling, you know, you're talking about, if you have a compost collection container like that at the Hilton, you're talking about the same thing, just like recycling is. Just, you're talking about, you know, reaching over maybe 6 inches to a foot and putting it into a different can. It's just with purpose, you know. And I've had, you know, really good feedback when I'm training people and I explain, hey, in an indirect way, when you put your food scraps into this bin, you could be helping to feed somebody in a, you know, underserved neighborhood. And when you kind of connect those pieces like that, people generally, like I said, will buy in, you know. And I think as the public continues to grow in consciousness about composting, you know, our experiences where we've done pilot programs is the public demand is strong, you know, once those options are offered. And, you know, I think with the public demand, there will be a natural growth of infrastructure and opportunity for companies like McGill to help build some of that desperately needed infrastructure, you know, because that's really the next step, is filling in that infrastructure. So we're proud to do our part.
And honestly, if I could pipe in and just say, you know, do some research. If you're in Harrisonburg, for example, there is a group that just got a grant from Keep Virginia Beautiful this past year, and they're called Soil Cycles. And it's literally a team of these people who they're adopting neighborhoods, and they ride around on their bikes and pick up your compost on a weekly basis. And so these little things are happening. And it's up to us to, you know, they're out there trying to sing as loud as they can, but search these kind of folks out. And that's how you can find that you can turn them into a better, more successful business, and you can obviously do what you need to do at home. But just research. There's a lot of groups out there that are looking to help get these processes and organizations off the ground. So do all you can to support them.
Hey, here's one real good question here that I didn't get back to. I'm sorry, it's for John at the Hilton. Just if you can talk for just a few minutes, John, about how long, or the type of changes that you had to make in your process, and how long the learning curve was in order for your program to really become effective.
Sure. I think Marshall touched on it as well. You know, the bins are only 6 inches apart, but again, it goes back to what I said. Make sure you roll it out with your team, your associate, do the training, you know, the visuals with your entire team, do a walkthrough of your kitchen and where these bins are, not only the blue bins, but the pickup bins on your loading dock or wherever they might be. So training's vital, but then it's ongoing. You know, our turnover, Tracey knows well, in our industry, the turnover is high. So you're constantly onboarding, reboarding. I'll talk to the majority of our new hire orientation classes and, you know, give them my 15 minutes of GM shtick on everything from recycling to composting to life safety and hospitality, just to make sure I don't miss anybody. We recently developed a green onboarding checklist, so that took about a decade to finally get to that point. But it's education and it's consistent onboarding, reboarding. But it was pretty quick at first. And then again, your partners like Nope, they need to, Chip and Marshall called me up over the years and said, hey John, your trash needs some work. And so then I've had to make sure I got my hands dirty and went back there, and I'll go back occasionally and dig through the trash and say, hey, we got a composting violation here. Could be a banana peel in the normal trash can, or it could be something in the other blue bin. So it's ongoing.
Hey, John, a follow-up there as part of that question was, the question was whether you collect pre and or post-consumer waste. And I know that was a progression that you went through.
Yeah, it is to my knowledge, pre and post. So we're collecting at the chef's table chopping, and we're also collecting, as you saw in the slide, at the dish machine, if there's some post waste as well, the banana peel and whatnot.
Right. I mean, we see your output is a mixture, and since you serve on Chinaware and crystal and use hard goods, then there's not a lot of fluffy paper type products. So his is eaten, prepared and eaten and unwanted. So we see it there.
Yeah, I would just add on just a real quick extra note that when you're handling post-consumer material, especially in a commercial environment, it's critical that you're working with a DEQ permitted facility like McGill. A lot of people think, hey, you can just take this into your backyard and compost it, and you it's something I caution. I never want to shoot down somebody's aspirations to compost, but it's critical that it be done in the right way. Otherwise, it could be a bad news story for compost if it wasn't made right, and people are getting sick from not fully processed compost that has pathogenic potential. And that's really the distinguisher between the pre-consumer and the post-consumer is once you serve it to people, if they could be sick and they bite into, say, a slice of pizza, that those pathogens have to go to a facility where the conditions are closely monitored as they are at McGill to ensure that the temperatures are getting high enough to kill any potential pathogens. So that's another critical piece when you're handling post-consumer material.
Well spoken, Marshall.
All right, folks, well, we're kind of we've answered, I think, most of our comments and things, but we'll continue to look at that here for a few more minutes. And our panelists maybe at the end could look back while you're not speaking. I'll take a little time to look back and see what some of our comments were, if we wanted to follow up with any of those. Let's see. And just now, Marshall just posted something good about it's the compost story from Kiss the Ground. That's another good resource. And so what I always ask our panelists to do is, pass along any of the resources and things that they might have that they want to make available for folks. We will have this entire webinar recorded. We'll clean up the recording and all that. And the recording actually does include all the chat information as well, if you wanted to follow up with any of that. And the information, you can get in touch. The contact information for our panelists is on the conference website. So that's there if you had follow-up questions in that manner too. Do our panelists have any other comments or?
I was just going to add, if anyone has any questions or wants to tour the facility, certainly happy to do so and happy to answer any questions to get them started. I do know, I'm pretty sure Marriott, Delta by Marriott and the Quirk, I think, are doing some composting as well. So there are other hotels coming on board and seeing the light. Thank you.
Yeah, and I know there's been talk over the years of getting a bus together and going out to McGill to see it in person at some point. So maybe make that happen sometime in the future. Hey, thanks to all of our panelists for being with us. Thanks for moderating there, Tracey. And it was a great story. We just like to see that story replicated over and over. And we will certainly be, I love the part about staff training, the importance of that. We actually have a staff training program that we're rolling out for the Virginia Green program. And I'm realizing I probably don't have as many details on composting because moving forward, we'd really like to see folks take that on. You can't go but so far with just recycling. And by composting, putting composting on top of that, we can really divert some significant poundage from the landfill. All right, so thanks so much. And just bear with me for half a second here as I switch back to our presentation mode, because our conference is not over yet, folks. It's we are still in our workshop mode, and it takes a second for this to boot up with everybody here. All right, and as you see, we continue on with our virtual workshops. We have 2 more next week.